Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Michael, and if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's this: loving the wrong people will destroy you. I spent years building a life for a family that was never really mine. I gave them everything: my love, my time, my sacrifices, believing I was their father, believing I belonged. But one night, with just a few cruel words, they shattered that illusion. "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like you own me." That was the moment something inside me snapped. And that night, as I sat in the dark, I made a decision. If I was nothing to them, then it was time I started acting like it. When I met Olivia, she was a widow, raising 2 kids on her own. Nathan was 4, an energetic little boy, always running around with his toy cars, always full of questions. Emily was just a baby, barely able to walk, clinging to her mother like a lifeline. Their father had been a military officer, a hero who never came home. That left Olivia alone, struggling to keep herself together while raising 2 kids who barely understood what had happened. I remember the first time I saw her. She looked exhausted, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. But there was a strength in her, a quiet resilience that pulled me in. She wasn't looking for help. She was surviving, pushing through, doing everything on her own because she had no other choice. And I made a decision. Not because anyone asked me to, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to be there for her, for them. I stepped in, slowly at first, helping with little things: a ride to the grocery store, fixing the broken heater in her apartment, keeping Nathan entertained so she could get a moment of peace. But as time passed, I became something more: a presence in their lives, a steady hand, a father figure. And when Olivia and I got married, it wasn't just about us. It was about building a family. At first, everything was perfect. I worked long hours to provide, but I made sure I was always home for dinner. I made sure Nathan and Emily had everything they needed: good schools, nice clothes, warm meals every night. But I didn't just provide for them financially. I was there. Every school event, front row, clapping the loudest. Every birthday, cake, presents, laughter. Every vacation, memories that would last a lifetime. They didn't just call me Michael. No, Nathan and Emily called me Dad. And I believed it. I loved them like they were my own flesh and blood. I sacrificed for them, worked tirelessly to make sure they never felt the void their real father had left behind. I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. But I was wrong. Because life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you, just when you think everything is perfect. It started small. A snide comment here and there. A little eye roll. Nothing serious. Nothing worth making a fuss over. They're just kids, I told myself. Teenagers go through phases. It'll pass. But it didn't. It got worse. I started noticing it more. The way Nathan would brush off my advice like it was nothing. The way Emily would sigh dramatically whenever I asked her to clean up after herself. The way their tone changed, as if I had become just another person in the house, not their father. At first, I ignored it. I let it slide. But deep down, something felt off. And Olivia? She said nothing. When Nathan started staying out late, ignoring curfews, I looked to her for support. She just shrugged. "They're teenagers, Michael. It's normal." When Emily started snapping back at me with an attitude that would have gotten me grounded for a month when I was her age, Olivia would sigh and mumble, "Just let it go. It's not worth arguing about." I should have seen the warning signs. I should have realized that the woman I had devoted my life to wasn't standing beside me anymore. She was standing behind them. And one night, everything changed. Nathan came home past midnight. No call, no text, just waltzed in like he owned the place, like I wasn't sitting there waiting for him. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. I just asked, "Where have you been?" He rolled his eyes. "Relax. I'm not a kid." I stood up, trying to keep my voice calm. "You live under my roof. You follow my rules." That's when he looked me dead in the eye and said it. "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like you own me." For a second, my whole body went cold. And then Emily, sweet, little Emily, who used to cling to my leg when she was scared, nodded and said, "Yeah, you're just some guy Mom married." I turned to Olivia, waiting for her to say something, to correct them, to tell them they were out of line. She didn't. She just stood there. No anger, no disappointment, just silence. And in that moment, something inside me broke. After everything I had done, after years of sacrifices, love, and devotion, it had all come down to this. I was nothing to them, just some guy. And that night, as I sat alone in the dark, a single thought ran through my mind. If I was nothing to them, maybe it was time I started acting like it. That night, I barely slept. I sat in the dark, staring at nothing, my mind replaying the words over and over again. You're not my real dad. You're just some guy mom married. It echoed in my head, a cruel reminder of the truth I had been too blind to see. For years, I had convinced myself that we were a real family, that the love I gave would be enough to erase the lines of blood and biology, that my sacrifices, my devotion, my presence would mean something. But I was wrong. I was just a placeholder, a convenience. And the worst part? Olivia knew it. She had known it all along. Because if she had ever truly seen me as their father, she would have stepped in that night. She would have defended me, corrected them, reminded them of everything I had done. But she didn't. She just stood there, silent, like she agreed, like I was nothing. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't happen in an instant. It builds, piece by piece, in the quiet moments you don't think twice about. A missed thank you here, a lack of appreciation there. Small signs that, when put together, paint the picture of someone who never truly valued you at all. And when you finally see it, when you finally understand, it's like waking up from a dream, only to realize you've been living in a nightmare. But I wasn't ready to accept that just yet, because deep down, a part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't real, that maybe it was just a bad moment, that maybe, if I just tried a little harder, things would go back to how they used to be. So, I swallowed my pride. I pushed past the pain. And the next morning, I woke up and carried on like nothing had happened. I still got up early, still made breakfast, still went to work and came home to the same house, the same people, pretending we were still a family. But something had changed, and I could feel it, because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. The little things that I used to brush off suddenly felt like daggers to the chest. The way Nathan ignored me when I spoke to him, the way Emily rolled her eyes when I asked her to do something, the way Olivia sat quietly, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to notice. It wasn't just teenage rebellion. It wasn't just a phase. It was a pattern, a slow, deliberate erasure of me from their lives. And I had been letting it happen. I had spent years giving them everything, pouring every ounce of love and effort into this family, thinking I was building something real. But in reality, I had been giving to people who never saw me as anything more than a provider. And once that realization set in, the illusion shattered. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way Olivia only spoke to me when she needed something, money for the kids, help around the house, an errand to be run. The way Nathan and Emily took without ever giving back, expecting, assuming, demanding, but never appreciating. The way I was there for everything, every school event, every birthday, every tough moment. But when I needed even the smallest ounce of respect, they had nothing to give. And the worst part? I had trained them to treat me this way, because I had given and given and given without ever asking for anything in return, without ever setting boundaries, without ever demanding the respect I deserved. I had let them believe that my presence, my sacrifices, my love, was just something they were entitled to. And the moment I realized that, I started seeing the truth for what it was. I wasn't part of this family. I was just useful, and usefulness runs out. But here's the thing about people who take you for granted. They never think you'll leave. They think you'll keep showing up, keep giving, keep sacrificing, because that's what you've always done. But they don't realize, when a man reaches his breaking point, there's no coming back. And I was almost there. I could feel it deep in my bones. Something inside me was shifting, changing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. Because when you spend your whole life giving, loving, and sacrificing for people who don't appreciate you, one day you wake up and realize you have nothing left to give. And when that day comes, when the last thread of patience snaps, when the final drop of love runs dry, there's no fixing it. There's only one thing left to do: walk away. But before I did that, I needed to make them understand what life would look like without me. I needed them to feel the loss. And I needed to do it in a way they would never forget. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I didn't demand an apology. I just watched as Nathan and Emily continued living under my roof, eating the food I provided, wearing the clothes I paid for, enjoying the comforts of a life I had built for them, while treating me like a stranger. No, worse than a stranger. A stranger at least gets common courtesy. Me? I was an afterthought. And the worst part? They didn't even notice. Nathan started coming home later and later, pushing curfews like they were just optional guidelines. When I asked him where he had been, he barely looked up from his phone. Chill, it's not a big deal. Emily followed in his footsteps. If I reminded her about schoolwork, she'd shrug and walk away. If I asked her to clean up after herself, she'd roll her eyes like I was some annoying inconvenience. I tried to talk to them, really talk, and they barely listened. At first, I told myself it was just teenage rebellion, that every kid goes through this phase, that if I just kept showing up, kept being patient, things would work themselves out. But then I noticed something else, something much worse. It wasn't just the kids. It was Olivia, too. Every time they disrespected me, I looked to her, expecting her to say something, hoping she'd step in, that she'd remind them who I was. She never did. She'd just sit there, pretending to be distracted by her phone, or sigh like I was the problem for even bringing it up. At first, I made excuses for her. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she didn't want to start an argument. Maybe she was just trying to keep the peace. But after a while, it became clear. She wasn't just avoiding conflict. She was letting them treat me this way. She was okay with it. And that should have been my first wake-up call. But I still wasn't ready to accept it. Not yet. So, I kept trying. Kept pushing through. Kept convincing myself that this was just a rough patch. That if I just stayed patient, things would go back to the way they used to be. But then came that night. The night everything changed. Nathan had been testing his limits, staying out later and later. That night, he walked through the front door past midnight. No call, no text, no explanation. Just waltzed in like he owned the place. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. I just asked, "Where have you been?" He sighed, like I was exhausting to deal with. "Relax. I'm not a kid." I took a deep breath. "You live under my roof. You follow my rules. If you can't respect that, we have a problem." That's when he looked me dead in the eye and said it. "You're not my real dad. Stop acting like you own me." The words hit me harder than I expected. But before I could even process them, Emily spoke up. "Yeah," she muttered, crossing her arms. "You're just some guy Mom married." I turned to Olivia. This was the moment. This was when she'd step in. Tell them they were out of line. Defend me. She didn't. She just stood there. No anger. No disappointment. Nothing. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just went numb. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. It had never been real. Not for them. All these years, I had been playing a role in their story. I had stepped in as a father, given everything I had, sacrificed, loved, provided, because I believed we were a family. But to them, I was just a supporting character. A useful one, sure. A provider. A man who made their lives easier. But not one they truly respected. Not one they ever considered theirs. And now that they didn't need me anymore, now that they were older, more independent, able to stand on their own, I was disposable, unnecessary, easily replaced. And that realization burned. Not with anger. Not with sadness. With clarity. So, I made a decision. That night, as I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled laughter coming from down the hall, the laughter of people who didn't even care about the knife they had just shoved into my back, I knew what I had to do. I had spent years giving to people who never once stopped to appreciate it. I had given my time, my money, my love, my effort, without ever asking for anything in return. And what had I gotten? Disrespect, dismissal, indifference. I had given and given and given, until there was nothing left. And if I was nothing to them, then maybe it was time I started acting like it. The next morning, I woke up different. Not angry, not hurt, just done. There's a moment when you realize you've been wasting your energy, screaming into the void, hoping someone, anyone, will hear you. But they don't, because they never cared in the first place. And once you accept that, something inside you shifts. I still went through the motions. Got dressed, had my coffee, walked past Nathan and Emily as they scrolled through their phones at the breakfast table, laughing at something on the screen like nothing had happened the night before. Like I wasn't even there. Olivia sat across from them, sipping her coffee, fully immersed in her phone, not even bothering to look up. No one said good morning. No one acknowledged me. I was just another piece of furniture in the house. And you know what? That was fine. Because I had made my decision. I went to work as usual, but something was different. The weight I had carried for years, the constant stress, the effort of holding everything together, the exhaustion of trying, was gone. Because I wasn't going to try anymore. I wasn't going to fight for respect from people who had no intention of ever giving it. I was done being their provider, their safety net, their free ride. That evening, I walked through the door just in time to see Emily leaving a mess in the kitchen. Dishes piled up in the sink. Crumbs scattered across the counter. A juice bottle knocked over, the sticky liquid spreading across the table. She saw me, and instead of moving to clean up, she just leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone like it wasn't her problem. I stood there for a moment, waiting, giving her a chance to do the right thing. She didn't. So I said, calmly, "Clean up after yourself." Emily barely glanced up, sighing like I had just ruined her entire day. "Why don't you do it? It's your house, isn't it?" Something cold settled in my chest. I turned, expecting Olivia to step in, to tell her daughter that what she said was out of line, to back me up. Instead, Nathan, who had been sitting at the kitchen table, earbuds in, pretending not to care, laughed under his breath. And then, without looking up, he muttered, "Why are you always trying to boss us around? You're not even our real dad." I felt the air leave the room. And then, Olivia, still staring at her phone, her voice light, casual, as if what she was about to say wasn't about to stick with me forever, murmured, "They have a point, Michael. Maybe you should ease up." I swear, for a second, my whole body went cold. Not just because of what she said, but because of how easy it was for her to say it. Like it wasn't cruel. Like it wasn't a betrayal. Like it wasn't the final nail in the coffin of everything I had built for them. Like she had been thinking it all along. I stood there, staring at her, and she wouldn't even look at me. Wouldn't even meet my eyes. I felt something inside me snap. Not in anger. Not in sadness. In clarity. That was it. That was the moment I knew I was done. I had spent years sacrificing for these people. Years working long hours, making sure they never went without, attending every school event, every birthday, every moment that should have meant something. And for what? For this? For a woman who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck? For kids who saw me as an ATM with no feelings, no worth beyond what I could give them? No, not anymore. That night, I sat alone in the dark, just thinking about every moment I had given them, every sacrifice, every late night spent working to make sure they had everything they needed, thinking about how, despite it all, I was nothing to them. And if I was nothing to them, then maybe it was time I started acting like it. That night, I made my decision. It wasn't sudden rage. It wasn't blind emotion. It was something deeper, a cold, absolute certainty. I had given everything to this family. My time, my love, my effort, my money. And what did I get in return? Disrespect, dismissal, indifference. So I was done. Not in the way they expected, not in some dramatic explosion of anger. No, that would have given them the satisfaction of thinking they had gotten to me. Instead, I made a different choice. I stopped. No more fatherly concern. No more sacrifices. No more playing the role of the provider when all I was to them was a walking ATM. I woke up the next morning and stopped giving a damn. I didn't say good morning. I didn't remind them about school. I didn't cook breakfast like I usually did. I just sat at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee, reading the news, while Olivia and the kids moved around me like I was invisible. Fine. Let them. But they were about to learn something very important. The first thing they noticed was the rides. Every morning, I used to drive Nathan and Emily to school. Rain or shine, I made sure they got there on time. I never asked for anything in return, never even received a thank you most days. That morning, I got up, grabbed my car keys, and walked out the door, alone. Nathan barely looked up from his phone. "Hey, wait. Where are you going?" "To work," I said flatly. He blinked. What about us?" I shrugged. "You're not kids, right? You don't need me." Then I got in my car and left. Nathan and Emily had to take the bus. Emily was furious, calling Olivia in a panic because she almost missed it. Nathan was forced to sprint 3 blocks because he assumed I would come back for them. I didn't. Next came the allowances. For years, I had given them money without question. Want to go out with friends? Here. Need a new pair of sneakers? Fine. That week, I stopped handing them cash like a personal bank teller. Nathan came up to me that Friday. "Hey, I need $20 for a movie." I looked at him. "Get a job." His face twisted in confusion. "What? You're 17, Nathan." Plenty of kids your age work part-time. You don't need me. He scoffed. Seriously? You're going to be petty about this? I smiled. No. I just realized something. You don't respect me. And respect is a two-way street. He walked away, muttering under his breath. Emily tried next. Dad, she started, her voice suddenly sweet, as if she hadn't spent the last few months rolling her eyes at me. I held up a hand. It's Michael, remember? Just some guy Mom married. Her face turned red, and she stormed off. At first, they laughed about it. Nathan smirked, telling his friends, guess the old man's having a midlife crisis. Emily told Olivia, he'll get over it. And Olivia? She played along. She covered for them, used her own money for their shopping trips, made sure their weekends were filled with fast food outings and unnecessary spending. She kept them comfortable, kept them cocky, kept feeding them the idea that they didn't need me. I let them think that, because I knew something they didn't. Olivia? She wasn't made of money, and I was the one who had been holding this family together. So I waited, and then it happened. At first, it was little things. The shopping bags coming home a little lighter. The fast food runs less frequent. The new clothes? Suddenly, their closets weren't overflowing anymore. Then came the bigger problems. School fees were due. Nathan got in trouble at school. Normally, I'd step in, talk to the principal, smooth things over. Not this time. Emily's phone broke. Normally, I'd replace it without a second thought. Not this time. Then came the real breaking point. No more Uber rides. They actually had to take the bus. Emily complained to Olivia, frustrated. Why can't you just get us a ride? And for the first time, Olivia's voice cracked with real stress. Because I don't have the money for that right now. That was the moment I knew. They finally understood. They had treated me like I was nothing. They had pushed me away, acting like my presence, my sacrifices, my love were worthless. And now? Now, they were feeling what life was like without me. And I'll be honest with you, it hurt. More than I can even put into words. Because I had spent years giving to these people, loving them with everything I had. But deep down, I knew this was the only way. You ever notice how some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone? How they think they can treat you like garbage, like you'll always be there, like you'll keep taking it. That was Nathan. That was Emily. That was Olivia. And now? Now, they were learning the hard way. It didn't happen all at once. At first, they thought I was bluffing. Nathan and Emily smirked, rolling their eyes every time I ignored their requests for money or refused to drive them places. Olivia barely acknowledged the shift, assuming, like always, that I'd get over it, that I'd come back around, that I'd keep playing my role, the provider, the pushover, the fool. But I wasn't playing anymore. I had quit the game. And little by little, the cracks started to show. The first time Nathan missed the bus, I watched from the kitchen window as he sprinted down the block, panic written all over his face. He had assumed, right up until the last second, that I'd change my mind, that I'd cave like I always had. I didn't. Emily was next. She had a school project due and needed supplies. Normally, I would have driven her to the store, swiped my card, and covered whatever she needed. Instead, I barely looked up from my book. Ask your mom. Emily scoffed. She's busy. Then figure it out, I said. For the first time, real frustration crept into her voice. But I turned the page. Not my problem. And it wasn't. It took a few weeks before Olivia finally started feeling it. At first, she tried to keep up the illusion. She used her money to fund the kids' outings, to keep their weekends full of shopping and takeout. She reassured them, we don't need him. But Olivia? She wasn't made of money. And I had been the one holding everything together. It started with small things. The shopping trips became less frequent. The fast food runs slowed down. The kids noticed, but they didn't complain too much. Then it got worse. Nathan needed money for a school event. Olivia hesitated. Maybe we can wait until next week. Nathan frowned. You never used to say that. Emily's phone broke. Not a minor crack, but completely shattered. She expected me to replace it immediately, like I always had. But I just shrugged. Tough break, I said. She blinked. But I need a new one. I met her eyes. Not my problem. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a comeback. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't getting what she wanted. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived one morning over breakfast. Nathan, arms crossed, glared at Olivia. We're out of cereal. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I know. I'll get groceries later. He scoffed. Why didn't you get them yesterday? Silence. Emily joined in, frowning. Yeah, we're out of snacks, too. Olivia snapped. Because I don't have the money for that right now, okay? The room went silent. Nathan looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Dad always. Then he stopped. Because that's when it finally clicked. Dad wasn't covering things anymore. And Olivia? She wasn't capable of picking up the slack. I sipped my coffee. Nathan turned to me, eyes narrowing. Why are you doing this? I raised an eyebrow. Doing what? He clenched his jaw. You know what? I set my cup down and leaned back. Oh, you mean not paying for everything? Not driving you around? Not playing the role of a father when you made it clear I wasn't one? Neither of them spoke. I tilted my head. You didn't need me, remember? Emily looked at the table. Nathan's jaw tightened. That's not. But I cut him off. No, you made this choice. You wanted a life without rules, without responsibilities, without me. Well, now you have it. Silence. Olivia, who had been so smug, so dismissive, finally looked nervous. She knew. She had let it go too far. She had pushed me too hard. And now? Now she was about to lose everything. That night, Olivia finally snapped. I came home from work and found her waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed, face red, already ready for a fight. You're being a damn child, Michael, she hissed. I arched an eyebrow. Am I? She slammed her hands on the counter. What kind of man punishes his own family just because his feelings are hurt? I leaned against the doorway, calm, collected, while she raged in front of me. You're neglecting your responsibilities, she shouted. And there it was. That word. Responsibilities. Not love. Not family. Not respect. No, I was just a responsibility. A provider. A walking paycheck. I folded my arms. Let me ask you something, Olivia. Why do you never defend me? She blinked. What? Why do you always let them talk to me like that? Why did you stand there, silent, when they told me I wasn't their real dad? Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. And then, she made the biggest mistake of all. She sneered. Because I agree with them, Michael. The words hit me like a train. She kept going, digging her own grave. I told them not to let you control them. I raised them alone before you, and I can do it again. I should have been angry. I should have been heartbroken. But you know what I felt? Relief. Because finally, she said it out loud. Finally, she told me the truth. She never saw me as their father. Never saw me as her partner. I was just a convenience. A tool. And now that I wasn't playing my role anymore, she was desperate. Nathan and Emily stood in the hallway, watching, smug, crossed arms, sure that they had won. But they hadn't won. Not even close. I nodded slowly, turned around, and walked away. Not because I was weak. Not because I was giving up. But because I was done. When people show you who they really are, believe them. And now? I had no choice but to accept the truth. I didn't speak to Olivia for days after that night. Not because I was angry. No, anger was long gone. What replaced it was something much colder. Clarity. I had spent years playing a role in a family that was never really mine. And now, I was finished. But I wasn't about to storm out in a fit of rage, leaving myself vulnerable. No, if Olivia and the kids wanted to treat me like I was disposable, I would show them what that actually looked like. I started preparing my exit. The first thing I did was document everything. I started saving every hostile text, every sarcastic remark, every message that showed their disrespect. Then, I went further. I noticed little things missing, my personal belongings, small but valuable items. At first, I thought I was imagining it, until one morning, I went to grab my work files and found them gone. A few days later, I walked outside and saw my car, keyed from front to back. Deep, jagged scratches across the driver's side, malicious, intentional. That was when I decided to check the security cameras I had installed a while back. And there they were, Nathan and Emily, laughing as they tore through my things, smiling as they destroyed what belonged to me. They wanted to make a statement. And so did I. I took everything, the texts, the threats, the property damage evidence, and went straight to a lawyer. When I laid it all out, she nodded. You have a strong case, Michael. Given the circumstances, you could push for more than just divorce. You could file a restraining order if necessary. A restraining order. Against the people I had once called my family. The thought should have hurt. But all I felt was vindication. I filed an official police report regarding the damage done to my belongings. The authorities weren't about to raid the house over some shredded clothes and a scratched-up car, but that wasn't the point. The point was the paper trail. By the time I was finished, I had a rock-solid case. And when the day came to leave, I did it without a word. I woke up early that morning. I didn't pack loudly. I didn't throw a fit. I just took what was mine, the things I actually cared about, and walked out. But before I left, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, Olivia would find divorce papers. And attached, every single document I had gathered. The police report, the photos of my vandalized car, the screenshots of their nasty messages. My lawyer had advised me to include it all, preemptively protecting myself from whatever false accusations she might try to throw my way. I left without saying goodbye, without looking back. And then I waited. I knew Olivia would see the papers eventually. I figured she'd be upset, but I wasn't prepared for how fast the calls started coming. First, it was angry, furious. "You're such a coward, Michael. You ran away the moment things got tough. What kind of man does this to his family?" Then, it turned to guilt-tripping. "You were never a real father. A real man doesn't just abandon his responsibilities." I didn't respond, because the truth was simple. I hadn't abandoned them. They had abandoned me first. When the calls went unanswered, the messages started. At first, Olivia tried to act strong. "I don't need you, Michael. The kids and I will be just fine without you." But I knew better. She wasn't just losing a husband. She was losing her financial security. Weeks passed, then months. At first, she tried to keep up appearances, acting like my absence meant nothing. But then the reality started sinking in. She wasn't used to being truly alone. No bank account access. No easy money. Everything was in my name, and I had made sure she had no legal claim over any of it. I knew Olivia. She had always talked a big game about being independent, about being able to raise her kids alone. But she was lying to herself. She had gotten used to the life I provided. And without me, it wasn't so easy anymore. Then, out of nowhere, the kids started messaging me. Nathan was the first. "Hey, can we talk?" I ignored it. A few days later, another message. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but things aren't great right now." Still, I didn't respond. Then came Emily. "Hey, Michael. I just wanted to say that I hope you're doing okay." I stared at my phone for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, I almost responded. But then I remembered. All the years of disrespect. All the times they dismissed me. All the times they made it clear I wasn't really their father. So I let the messages sit there. Unread. Unanswered. Because I knew what was happening. They had lost their safety net. And now, they were regretting it. But regret doesn't erase years of disrespect. Regret doesn't change who they show me they were. And some lessons in life, you have to learn the hard way. When I hung up that final call with Olivia, I expected to feel something. Relief, triumph, maybe even a sliver of guilt. But I felt nothing. And that was how I knew I had truly moved on. For the first time in years, my life was my own. No more walking on eggshells. No more sacrificing for people who didn't appreciate it. No more playing the role of the provider, the pushover, the fool. I was finally free. At first, it felt strange. The silence. The lack of responsibility. The sudden realization that I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. I expected it to be lonely. But it wasn't. Because when you've spent years surrounded by people who never really saw you, who never truly valued you, you realize you've been alone for a long time. And now, I was embracing it. I focused on my career, putting in time and effort not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I reconnected with old friends, people I had pushed aside for years because I was too busy playing the role of a father to kids who never wanted me in the first place. I traveled. I picked up hobbies I had forgotten I loved. I finally started living for myself. And for the first time in years, I woke up every morning with peace instead of dread. But just because I had moved on didn't mean they had. The texts from Nathan and Emily never stopped. At first, it was casual, as if nothing had happened. "Hey, hope you're doing okay." Then, it turned into apologies. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. We should have treated you better." Then regret. "Things have been hard since you left. Mom, she's not handling things well." And finally, the one that almost made me laugh. "I miss you." I let the messages sit there. Unread. Unanswered. Because here's the thing. Regret means nothing when it comes too late. They had their chance. They had years of my love, my sacrifices, my efforts. And they threw it all away. I knew Olivia had to be struggling. She had always relied on me, whether she admitted it or not. And now, she was alone. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she had started looking for a second job. that she had been selling off things in the house to keep up with expenses. She had spent years acting like she could do it all without me. And now she was learning the truth. She never could. One day, I received a final message from her. "Michael, I know you hate me, but please, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, emotionless. Did I hate her? No. I nothinged her. And that was worse. I deleted the message. Because some people only realize your worth once you're gone. And by then, it's too damn late. Looking back, I don't regret what happened. I don't regret walking away. I don't regret choosing myself for the first time in years. Because here's what I've learned. Never let people treat you like an ATM. Never beg for respect. Never waste your energy proving your worth to people who refuse to see it. And most importantly, when you realize you're being used, walk away. Because some people, they don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. And by then, they have to live with the consequences. I don't know where Olivia, Nathan, or Emily are now. And honestly, I don't care. Because I'm finally living for myself. And that's the best decision I ever made. Looking back, I don't regret walking away. I don't regret choosing myself after years of being unappreciated, dismissed, and used. Because if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this. Never let anyone take you for granted. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. That being a good man, a good husband, and a good father meant enduring disrespect, staying silent, and giving without question. But that's not love. That's self-destruction. So here's my advice to anyone, especially those who have spent their lives giving. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you demand. If someone doesn't value you, don't waste your time proving your worth. Love should never come at the cost of your dignity. If you have to lose yourself to keep someone else happy, it's not love, it's control. People will only appreciate you when you stop giving. And by then, it's too late. I spent years living for others, putting them first. But now, I live for me. And I have never been happier.